After this, your perception of women won't return to what it was. Because the truth is, they're not the same. Not your grandmother's kind. Not even your mother's kind. What you're dealing with now is an entirely new breed. A product of decades of social engineering, emotional inflation, and spiritual decay wrapped in empowerment slogans. The woman across from you tonight, sipping her drink and scrolling her phone, is not who your grandfather courted. Her entire psychological architecture has been rewritten. And the problem is, most men are still speaking an extinct language. They're running old code on a new operating system that doesn't recognize love, loyalty, or contribution as valid inputs anymore. You sense it, don't you? That quiet frustration that lives beneath every date, every argument, every moment of disconnection. You're not imagining it. You're not crazy. You're just awake. Let me prove it with something painfully simple. Ask any woman under 40 to cook a meal, not a 5-star dinner, just something that smells like home. Watch the panic spread across her face. I don't know how. That's not really my thing. Why don't we order? Now ask the same woman what she expects in a man. 6 feet tall. 6 figures. Emotionally intelligent. Masculine, yet sensitive. Confident, yet humble. Dominant, yet deferential. She wants a paradox, a god in human form. The imbalance isn't subtle anymore. It's grotesque. We've entered an era where the average woman demands excellence while offering mediocrity. Where effort is considered oppression and accountability is rebranded as trauma. Social media didn't just change the culture, it rewired the female psyche. Every woman now is told she's a queen, a goddess, a divine being deserving of adoration simply for existing. Not for building, nurturing, or contributing, just for being. And when you convince millions of average people that they're extraordinary, you destroy their capacity for gratitude. Our grandfathers didn't marry perfect women, but they married competent ones. Women who could turn scarcity into abundance, chaos into order. They didn't demand 6 figures. They demanded stability. They didn't chase luxury. They created warmth. Today's woman can't boil water but can give you a TED Talk on emotional labor. She can't balance a budget but can quote therapy language like a priest reciting scripture. She confuses independence with entitlement and equality with superiority. I met a man once, successful, grounded, kind. He dated a woman for 2 years who never lifted a finger to help. She didn't cook, didn't clean, didn't contribute financially. But she had a 10-point list of everything he wasn't doing emotionally. When he told her the imbalance was unfair, she called him toxic. In her mind, contribution was oppression, but complaint was empowerment. This is the new reality. Women are no longer taught partnership, they're taught performance. They curate lives for digital applause, not real intimacy. And the irony? The louder the empowerment gets, the weaker the character becomes. It's not that men want women barefoot in kitchens. That's a childish caricature. Men want women capable of adulthood. That's it. Basic competence. Shared effort. A sense of teamwork. But competence has become optional while expectations have become divine. And this is where the modern man finds himself trapped, forced to play a game with rules that keep changing mid-play. If you lead, you're controlling. If you follow, you're weak. If you provide, it's expected. If you ask for anything, it's abuse. Every man I speak to says the same thing in different words. I'm tired. Not tired of women. Tired of pretending this imbalance is normal. And they're right. It's not normal. It's engineered. The decline of the traditional woman wasn't an accident. It was a campaign. A slow erosion of identity disguised as liberation. Because if you destroy the partnership between man and woman, you destroy the foundation of civilization itself. Men have adapted in silence for decades. They've lowered expectations, compromised values, rationalized dysfunction, just to survive. But survival isn't living. And deep down, every man knows it. That's why so many of you feel disconnected. You're not chasing love anymore, you're dodging chaos. You're no longer looking for partnership, you're managing emotional volatility. You've been told you're the problem for noticing the problem. You've been gaslit into silence, guilt, and confusion. But awareness is not hate. And truth is not bitterness. It's clarity, and clarity is the first step to freedom. Because until you see this dynamic for what it is, you'll keep trying to love someone who's been programmed not to love back. You don't need to hate modern women. You just need to stop expecting them to be traditional ones. That's where awakening begins. Let me show you how this plays out in real life. Not theory, not statistics, but quiet, brutal reality. A client of mine, 42 years old, owns 3 businesses. Calm, masculine, structured. He met a woman who said she wanted a real man. You know that phrase, it's always a test. For 2 years, he paid for everything, planned everything, carried everything. She didn't cook, didn't clean, didn't nurture. Her contribution was emotional chaos and occasional affection when he performed to her standards. One day, he told her he felt drained, that he couldn't keep giving without reciprocity. Her response? You're not emotionally available. That's the new manipulation tactic, emotional weaponization. Modern women have learned to use therapy language like a sword, slicing accountability into fragments of victimhood. She wasn't failing to contribute. He was failing to hold space. She wasn't being entitled. She was honoring her boundaries. See the pattern? Every word that once represented responsibility has been redefined to justify selfishness. Another man showed me his ex's dating profile after a breakup. Her requirements: over 6 feet 2 inches, $150,000 plus salary, owns property, no kids, emotionally intelligent, funny, confident. Her offerings: good vibes, sarcasm, knows her worth. She's 35, 2 kids from different fathers, in debt, but still believes she's the prize. That's not confidence, that's delusion mass-produced by validation culture. Everywhere you look, women are told they're the exception, even when they've done nothing exceptional. It's not that competence disappeared by accident, it was traded for convenience. Why learn to cook when you can Postmate everything? Why learn to communicate when you can block, ghost, and move on? Accountability takes effort. Entitlement feels easier. And men, we enabled it. We tolerated bare minimum behavior because confrontation felt like conflict. We didn't want to be labeled controlling, so we stopped setting boundaries. We thought peace was better than truth. But the absence of conflict isn't peace, it's decay. I remember sitting in a cafe, watching a couple who looked picture perfect. She's scrolling her phone. He's quiet. You could feel the distance. Suddenly, she looks up and says, "You never talk." He smiles weakly. "You were on your phone." She sighs, rolls her eyes. "See? This is what I mean, you're so negative." That's the emotional inversion. She creates the problem, blames him for reacting to it, then punishes him for noticing it. It's psychological gaslighting packaged as normal interaction. And this constant dance, the man trying to remain calm while being blamed for every emotional weather change, breaks him down slowly, until silence becomes his survival strategy. He stops leading, stops expecting, stops asking. It's not apathy, it's protection. Because when every expectation turns into an argument, men learn to expect nothing. That's the quiet epidemic, men lowering standards to microscopic levels just to avoid disappointment. Expect nothing, and you can't be let down. But here's the danger. When you lower your standards too far, you start normalizing dysfunction. You start saying it's fine to behavior that should be disqualifying. You start mistaking tolerance for strength. I met another man, a father of 2. His wife refused to contribute financially because her energy didn't align with corporate life. He worked 60 hours a week, came home to a mess, and cooked dinner. When he asked for help, she accused him of failing to appreciate her feminine essence. That's where we are now, laziness disguised as spirituality. 5 years later, she left him. Her reason? He stopped making her feel special. The same man who carried her entire life on his shoulders, called controlling for finally demanding balance. It's not that these women are evil. They're lost. They were taught that giving is losing. That dependency equals weakness. That being needed means being owned. They traded contribution for validation, and now they don't know how to love without negotiation. And here's what men need to realize. You can't fix that. You can't reason someone out of a mindset they were never reasoned into. Modern women aren't malicious, they're misprogrammed. And the only way to protect yourself from misprogramming is to stop participating in it. The solution isn't to argue, debate, or lecture. It's to observe and filter. Stop rewarding dysfunction with attention. Stop mistaking beauty for value. Stop confusing confidence with capability. Because every time you accept the unacceptable, you teach her it's acceptable. That's how entire generations forget what partnership even means. There's a moment every man reaches, a quiet breaking point where frustration turns into clarity. It's not rage. It's not bitterness. It's the moment he realizes he's been negotiating with someone who doesn't even understand the concept of reciprocity. He's been trying to build a bridge with someone who thinks connection is a service she's owed, not something she earns. I've seen it happen hundreds of times. Men who once believed love was enough now standing in the ruins of one-sided devotion. Men who built entire lives around women who contributed nothing but complaints. They sit across from me, drained. Eyes hollow. Voices low. And when they talk, it always sounds the same, like they're mourning something that never really existed. She just stopped caring. She used to appreciate me. She says I changed. No, brother. You didn't change. You woke up. You started noticing the imbalance, the constant taking, the disappearing gratitude, the emotional roller coaster that never stops. You realized the relationship wasn't built on love. It was built on extraction. Every man who's lived this knows the exhaustion. The endless cycle of trying to do more, give more, fix more, while being told he's not enough. You become a provider, therapist, entertainer, emotional regulator, and punching bag all in one. And still, it's never enough. Because modern relationships aren't about partnership anymore. They're about leverage. Who gives less? Who cares less? Who can manipulate better through emotion? This is the new gender warfare. Invisible, psychological, relentless. Women demand traditional men but refuse traditional responsibilities. They want providers without provision, protectors without peace, leaders without submission. They want to receive everything while giving nothing. And when you ask for balance, you're accused of oppression. Why should I cook? Why should I clean? Why should I contribute financially? But expect those same men to work 60 hours, pay for everything, plan everything, fix everything, lead everything, and never complain. That's not partnership. That's servitude. The double standard has become institutional. A woman can mock masculinity, reject femininity, and call herself strong. A man defends boundaries. He's labeled insecure, toxic, controlling. You see it everywhere, men walking on eggshells while women stomp around demanding equality with zero accountability. The feminine once balanced the masculine. Now it competes with it. And that's why relationships today feel like wars instead of homes. You can feel it in the tone. In the arguments that start from nothing and escalate to everything. In the tears that are used as weapons, not expressions. In the constant need to manage moods that shift by the hour. You're not dating women anymore. You're managing emotional storms disguised as empowerment. And the psychological cost is brutal. Men are checking out. Emotionally, spiritually, even physically. They're tired of explaining basic logic to people operating entirely on emotion. Tired of trying to reason with someone who feels first and thinks never. The average modern man has quietly entered survival mode. He expects nothing so he won't be disappointed. He provides by default, tolerates by habit, and endures by necessity. He stops demanding reciprocity because he's learned it doesn't exist. But here's the tragedy. When you lower expectations too far, you start enabling incompetence. The woman who does nothing starts believing doing nothing is enough. The man who accepts it slowly becomes invisible. And once a woman stops respecting you, love dies. Respect is the oxygen of male desire. Without it, affection suffocates. And that's what's happening across millions of homes right now, quiet suffocation behind smiling selfies. I once spoke to a man whose wife hadn't worked in nearly a decade. He asked her, politely, to start grocery shopping since she had time. Her answer, "I'm not your servant." The irony? She lived entirely off his labor, his income, his effort, and still saw herself as oppressed. That's the level of delusion entitlement breeds. You can't build families on that foundation. You can't raise children in that confusion. Because children learn what they see, and what they're seeing now is imbalance disguised as equality. Women want traditional outcomes: security, stability, loyalty. But they reject the traditional behaviors that produce those outcomes. They demand the fruits of the tree they've uprooted. And men are waking up. Slowly, quietly, dangerously. Because the more you see the pattern, the harder it becomes to unsee it. Once you recognize the manipulation, the double standards, the emotional chaos, you stop wanting to fix it. You just want peace. That's the moment of masculine rebirth. When a man decides that solitude with dignity is better than companionship with disrespect. When he chooses silence not because he's weak, but because he's done arguing with delusion. That's when he becomes dangerous. Because a man who no longer needs approval becomes untouchable. And that's the direction this generation is heading. Fewer marriages, fewer families, fewer illusions. Men are reclaiming their sanity by walking away from insanity. They're not bitter. They're just awake. There comes a point when every man has to make peace with the truth. The women you were raised to love no longer exist in the way you were taught. The blueprint has been burned, rewritten, and sold back as empowerment. You can spend years mourning that loss, or you can adapt to reality. Because the men who survive what's coming aren't the ones who fight the hardest. They're the ones who see things exactly as they are and stop lying to themselves. The modern woman is a paradox. She wants freedom but resents its consequences. She wants independence, yet seeks provision. She preaches equality but only when it benefits her. She wants a man to lead, but only in the direction she chooses. The contradictions aren't mistakes. They're features of a system designed to keep her perpetually unsatisfied, because dissatisfaction drives consumption. The truth is, the entire culture profits from her unhappiness. The self-help industry, the dating apps, the beauty brands, they all thrive when women are convinced that contentment is complacency. So what do you do as a man navigating that? You stop participating in the madness. You stop negotiating with delusion. You stop begging for reciprocity from someone trained to see giving as loss. You create peace by walking away from chaos. Because when you demand nothing, you regain everything: your time, your focus, your dignity. You have to understand something most men never will. You can't fix people programmed not to see themselves as flawed. You can't reason with emotional logic. You can't rescue someone who's been taught that accountability is oppression. What you can do is control the frame of your own life. Define what you will tolerate, what you will value, what you will invest in. Set standards so high that mediocrity can't reach you, not because you're better than anyone, but because peace has become your only non-negotiable. I've seen men waste years trying to prove their worth to women who couldn't even see it. They work harder, love deeper, give more, hoping that at some point she'll appreciate it. But appreciation doesn't grow in entitlement. It dies there. Every act of patience becomes another reason for her to take you for granted. Every act of generosity becomes evidence that she deserves more. That's the tragedy of the modern dynamic. Giving doesn't earn love anymore, it just feeds expectation. The truth is, most men don't need more advice on how to get women. They need clarity on why they want them. Because if the motivation is loneliness, guilt, or validation, you'll always be enslaved by those emotions. But if the motivation is alignment, shared values, peace, partnership, you'll stop tolerating dysfunction disguised as femininity. You'll stop confusing attraction for compatibility. You'll learn that silence can be more intimate than chaos, and solitude more healing than compromise. Men talk about the extinction of traditional women as if it's purely external, but it's also internal. The modern world has feminized men through constant guilt, constant shame, constant self-doubt. They've been taught to apologize for being masculine, for being assertive, for setting boundaries. The only way to balance that is to reclaim what you were told to suppress. Not aggression, not domination, but clarity, leadership, direction. These are not toxic traits. They're stabilizing forces in a world that thrives on instability. Understand this. Women still crave what they deny: strength, consistency, emotional regulation. They just want it without having to respect it. That's why most relationships fail. They desire masculine steadiness but resent the authority that comes with it. They want safety without submission, protection without gratitude. But a dynamic without respect cannot survive. It collapses under its own contradiction. So let them call you cold for choosing peace. Let them call you controlling for having standards. Let them call you bitter for refusing to be used. Because every insult they throw is just proof that you've stopped playing their game. You're no longer their supply of validation. You're no longer the emotional landfill for their chaos. You're a man who's decided to live in truth, even if that means living alone. The future of masculine peace won't come from changing women. It'll come from men who stop accepting distortion as normal. From men who remember that love without respect is slavery. From men who would rather walk alone in dignity than sleep beside someone who resents their strength. Maybe one day, balance will return. Maybe the next generation will rebuild what this one destroyed. But until then, you have one duty: protect your mind, your boundaries, your soul. Stop chasing ghosts of what women used to be, and start honoring the man you still are. Because once you see the game clearly, you don't play it for revenge. You play it for freedom. And the truth, the one that no one wants to admit, is that freedom has always been the most masculine thing a man can possess.